Depending where you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Amanda DeCardy, and today I'm providing an evaluation or a critique of a dissertation submitted to Nova Southeastern University in 2007. At the time, Arnold Glogauer was a doctoral student in the concentration area of ITDE. He was serving as a principal of a small parochial school in an affluent suburb of a major city in the United States, and his dissertation topic explored student opinion leaders and innovation adoption in the small parochial school. I will use two rubrics from Nova Southeastern University to support the evaluation of this dissertation. The first is the Applied Dissertation rubric, which will guide me in focusing on 7 distinct dimensions. The dimensions are the introduction, or the statement of the problem, where the problem should be clearly conveyed within the context of the literature, and the rationale should be strong, and the purpose of the dissertation should be clear and focused. The second area is the review of the literature. The third is an evaluation of the methods or the approaches the researcher used. The fourth dimension focuses on the results or the outcome, and the fifth evaluates the discussion or the summary of the findings. Finally, I will evaluate the writing quality and the overall contributions to the field of instructional technology and distance education. A superior dissertation would score a 5 in all of these areas. The second rubric addresses the research design, the ethical design, a critical evaluation of the literature, an evaluation of the internal and external validity, the appropriate use of data analysis, and the effective academic writing. Beginning with the introduction dimension, the dissertation is strong because of the precise articulation of the problem and rationale by the author. Using Rogers' research on the diffusion of innovations, the author grounded the study in theory by addressing the stages of innovation and the role of opinion leaders. Discussing technological innovation, Glogauer articulated the complexities of the problem clearly on the shown quote. The problem was the slow spread of technology innovation, given the demands of a dual curriculum and the limitations this presented within the available time of the school day. This slow spread of TI resulted in underutilization of resources, such as the technology lab, and limiting opportunities for growth of students' technological abilities. This lack of opportunity had far-reaching implications for each of the individual students and for the reputation of the school itself. The dual curriculum referred to demands of the school teaching the required secular curriculum while also teaching the Judaic curriculum with a finite amount of time. Glogauer's rationale for his dissertation topic indicated the school needed to innovate in the area of technology in order to stay competitive with the school's public school counterparts. Using the diffusion of innovation theory developed by Rogers, Glogauer focused on non-adult opinion leaders' influence through the stages of innovation. Rogers established the foundation of behavioral characteristics of student opinion leaders, and ultimately, opinion leaders could be activated to promote the change for the better. Establishing lasting changes or adopting an innovation is accomplished through the actions of opinion leaders. It was the characteristics of the process of activating the student opinion leaders to make lasting change for the better, which was the focus and interest of this study. After the initial research, Glogauer came up with his research questions. They were, what factors did student opinion leaders identify as critical to peer adoption of an after-school technology innovation? Number 2, what opinion leaders have to say about persuading their peers about the after-school TI? And number 3, how did the opinion leaders recommend introducing the after-school PI? Glogauer organized his literature review into 4 areas. The first was the adoption of innovations in organizations. The second was educational system design flaws. The third was factors impacting recruiting, enrollment, and retention in the specified school setting. And the fourth was the area of technology integration in the educational environment. The diffusion of innovation research was complete as Glogauer nearly told a story of connections between the research and his dissertation topic. He began with Rogers' research of the innovation diffusion process, followed that with Chapman's 1986 research about opinion leaders with their role in the stages of the innovation adoption. He followed that with the Valenti and Davis 1999 research findings of accelerating the pace of the diffusion by recruiting and identifying opinion leaders and giving them a title to make them more vested in the innovation process. He also used Cole and Hardy's 1973 findings, which allowed for the innovation findings to be generalized to younger populations. And finally, Glagauer used Fry's unpublished dissertation in 1999, which used questionnaires and stratified random sampling of students to evaluate the effectiveness of student councils. He laid the groundwork and rationale for his study through the literature review. The applied dissertation rubric states the dissertation should appropriately detail the participants, design, methods, and statistical analysis. The sample size consisted of 130 students in a K-8 setting. This was a mid-upper socioeconomic area, and the selection of the students occurred in stages. First, opinion leaders were identified through a quantitative self-designation method, which was validated as a measure of Rogers' more recent formulations of the opinion leader concept. Glagauer clearly articulated the procedures for selecting students for the study, which included a self-designation method and the use of the student personal strength scale to target the top 25% of students who saw themselves as a strong force of persuasion. Randomized selection was used to identify the final members of the Student Opinion Leadership Team, or the SOLT. Once students were selected, Glagauer conducted a case study with observable phenomenon on the content of statements answering the theory-driven research questions. Operationally defined codes were used to focus the decision-making process of promoting and motivating technology change. Glagauer collected data through interviews, journal entry prompts based on research questions, and meeting transcripts, using a co-investigator to help address bias. Reliability was addressed through the test-retest method and the split-half methods with both German and Israeli samples. The validity data included face validity, content, construct, and predictive validity. The shorter 10-item scale could have been a limitation, but literature supported that it was empirically sound, reliable, and valid. In Appendix A, the applied dissertation rubric states that all results reported should be clear and concise. In this dimension, the author earned a 5 because of the organization of findings around the research questions. The results were organized around the quantitative stage of selecting the participants and the qualitative stage of analyzing the collected data from participants during the study. Glagauer summarized, confirmatory cross-examination or triangulation across all 3 sources of data was employed. 3 initial data codes were developed, 1 corresponding to each of the 3 research questions. The data codes evolved through the 3 stages, yielding an additional 5 codes. The PA code was an additional code specified to the first research question. The remaining codes that evolved were categorized as integrated codes reflecting content common to all 3 research questions. According to the constant comparison data analysis technique, codes were established to identify commonalities in the information provided by the participants of the study. Significant trends consistent with Rogers' theory of diffusion of innovations were revealed in the data sources and answered the 3 research questions. For example, a clear critical factor, or CF, that came through all of the data resources was that for the successful adoption of the after-school activity program, an endorsement of the innovation by the student opinion leaders within the school population was important. Ultimately, the researcher earned a 5 in this dimension because evidence from the data sources demonstrated strong links between the application of diffusion of innovations theory within the SOLT interactions and how to address the institution's problem of lagging TI. The applied dissertation rubric states that the dissertation is written with great clarity and precision. Each sentence should be understandable and contain appropriate word choice, grammar, punctuation, and spelling. In this area, Glagauer earned a 5, as the narrative was logical, coherent, and quite frankly, enjoyable. The study made a strong contribution to the field of ITDE, as it was one of the first studies to examine the tenets of the diffusion of innovation theory in a non-adult population, and it employed one of the first studies to use a quantitative measure to identify non-adult opinion leaders. The study confirmed specific theoretical constructs with Rogers' theory of diffusion of innovations and contributed critical insight and strategies for successful diffusion of innovations in a school setting. The dissertation by Glagauer was a high-quality contribution to the field of ITDE. The criterion from the dissertation general rubric outlined the quality components, and academic writing was especially good in this dissertation because there was a flow that told a story and was highly engaging. However, there were a few recommendations which would have made it better. Public elementary school teachers spent an average of about 22 hours per week teaching 4 core subjects, and private school teachers spent on average about 3 hours less per week. The public schools themselves were concerned about instructional time when they had on average twice as much time in a given year. That was from Glogauer on page 6. The math seemed a bit unclear, and on a personal level, I also wish that the author would have explained the coding and coding process in the methodology section instead of the results section. But overall, this dissertation was very strong and should be used as an example for scientists to follow.